Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today I wanted to visit more than Tracy T. I will say she's one of the more prolific FAs, so you're going to be seeing more about her. I have been really noticing who is about it and who isn't, because a lot of people are silent now, or a lot more silent than they used to be because it isn't popular anymore. Now, remember, I'm still predicting there to be a fat lash, which what I mean is I think next year fat acceptance will go up again. And we need to be ready here to fight it back down again. Okay. So we're going to have an Empire Strikes Back moment. That's my prediction. We'll see if I'm right. I'm going to try to prevent it the best I can. If it doesn't happen, that's amazing. But I feel it. I feel it in my soul. So yeah, but for now, we're seeing who's really about it. We're seeing the future queens of fat acceptance, the ones who didn't give up when it was down and out. Okay, and Tracy is one of them. That's not her name, but I'm still going to call her Tracy. So she's actually Abby. I just looked. Abby, okay. We'll actually use her real name. Okay, let's go. So this comment says, my mom told me that if a man finds a fat woman attractive, then there's something wrong with them, which really made me think any guy interested in me was mentally unwell. Interesting. Okay, let's see.
I got this message too, and I internalized it in a really specific way. Basically, I was like, if anybody who likes me has something wrong with them, I don't want them, because I know that inside I'm actually fantastic, but I'm fat on the outside, so obviously no one's going to want me, whatever. But I had pretty unshakable self-confidence in my own intellect, in my own personality, in the fact that I was interesting and creative and smart. So I was not going to settle for somebody who wasn't those things, and I didn't want that in the world. Like, I didn't want to show up to the world in that way.
So what I will say is I can relate to her on this level throughout weight loss or with the condition of weight loss, because I think that it can be a bit cynical to talk about like a dating marketplace or, kind of harsh to talk about things in that way. But I think there's some truth to it, seeing where you're at kind of thing. And I think for me, I struggled a lot with knowing I could probably do better if I lost the weight. And that being a condition or like a conditional moment for me. I didn't think there's something wrong with a guy that's into me or any of that. It's just when you are super morbidly obese, it puts you at such a weird category, which I'm not saying Tracy is. I mean, Abby. I don't think Abby is super morbidly obese, but I'm just saying, like, when you are, it puts you in a weird category where there's only like a very select type of people that are going to be interested in you or to see past that, which there are some people who don't care about body size. It does exist, even in men, it does exist. I found it, but a lot do. And so when you're already, like in my case, I'm gay already, there's already such a limited dating pool, and that becomes even more limited. And basically, you just have a lot of guys that, maybe you're not as attracted to, or maybe they don't have other things going on that you're not interested in that try to reach out to you. And you always feel this condition of, but I could do better if I lost weight. So I have had that issue a lot throughout my life. And especially now that I'm losing the weight, it is difficult. Honestly, it is a very difficult thing because it can be frustrating because I'm like, I know I'm going to get to a certain place, but there's such a stigma around weight loss and there's so many people that fail all the time that it's like, it doesn't even matter. Honestly, to the general population, you are where you are, and most people view it that you'll stay that way or you're going to gain weight. And so that's tough. It's a tricky thing, and I hate it. So while I can't relate to her completely because I didn't think there was something wrong with someone, I would just say it puts you at a situation where there's so much scarcity or there's such a rare quality to find a decent guy who is still attracted to you, even if you're big. And with that, it's like you're not as practiced. So then if it doesn't work out, then it's dry again for quite a while. It's tough. It's very hard. But that's where I've felt, which I'm not saying I'm like the hottest thing ever or whatever, especially not being fat and all that. But I think I could definitely do better than I could do now if I was thin, if that makes sense. So it's tough, and I feel like, you know, it's part of why I didn't want to ever be single when I was losing weight, because I didn't want to have these questions. But of course, life comes at you fast, and here we are, and all this stuff. But do I find something wrong with the guys who are getting at me now? No, I don't. And I'm still a small fat. I'm still very much like in probably Abby's category of fatness. I don't view something wrong with these guys. Do I think I could possibly do better? I do. I do. I'm going to be honest. I do. And that's a tricky place to be. It is a better place to be in as a small fat, to just kind of be like, okay, I may be able to do better, and just kind of be weighing options and looking at different things, especially like I said, where I'm experiencing having more options than the dry, complete desert that I've been in since around April or maybe June of 2023. That mid fat phase, it is just, ooh, it is rough for dating. I've told you guys, I think the proportions are bad. It's very difficult. You're invisible is very difficult. But yeah, I mean, things have shifted at this moment, and it's kind of weird how fast it shifted, where all of a sudden I have a lot more attention romantically. But like I said, I don't think it's serious. I don't think it's necessarily high quality guys or any of these things. And so I'm still like kind of weighing that out. But for her to say that about guys like at this size, I don't think there's anything wrong. It's just maybe you could do better, which is harsh. It's a harsh statement, but I think we have to look at things realistically sometimes. And sometimes real life is harsh, you know? So I don't know. I don't know. I find it interesting that she said this, or that she's kind of touching on this, because I've been thinking about it a lot recently. So let's see what else she has to say.
So I started to believe that any dating that I did was me like conceding that I had low self-esteem. Any acceptance of any kind of attention was me being like, that's correct. I am low value. Like that's
Okay, that's insane to me. That doesn't really make much sense, but I guess if she's internalizing the message that there's something wrong with somebody, if they like you, I guess I can understand that. Obviously, I think that that's wrong. You know, I totally do. I don't think that it's necessarily something wrong with you. I think it's just, like I said, there's a shifting status with weight. Unfortunately, you know, we have a fat acceptance society, especially in the West and in America, and certain sizes have a certain social status because they've tried to push this as a political group since the 60s. So that's the impact. I wish it wasn't a big deal. I wish there wasn't a social strata based on size, but fat acceptance rhetoric has created that, and they continue to maintain it. And there's also a backlash to fat acceptance that also reinforces it. I'm going to keep arguing on this channel that we need to do away with it completely because it's not realistic. Look at people's habits. Look at their trajectory. Look at these things. If somebody's thin today, it doesn't mean they're going to be thin tomorrow. If somebody's fat today, it doesn't mean they're going to be fat tomorrow. We need to acknowledge that this is a mutable trait. This is not immutable. This is not something you're born as. This is not your DNA. This is not any of this BS. And I think when we have this, it creates these very, very strange dynamics in dating that can feel very constricting to a lot of fat people and fat people like myself who are losing weight. It's tough. It is a question that I think every single fat person losing weight has to consider, unless if they're just not interested in dating whatsoever. It's hard. It's a tough thing. But like I said, I think acknowledging that it's truly your own issue, like this is my problem. Acknowledging what's your problem and acknowledging what's somebody else's problem can really help. And I don't think this line of logic of projecting your own issues or the issues of you interacting with greater society onto a potential dating partner, that doesn't make any sense. And that is clearly dumb, which I think that she would agree with. I don't think that she's thinking this line of logic is true, but I'm just kind of explaining it from my perspective. Kind of like further supporting the point. Let's see what else she says.
How I read it. So I boycotted dating. And I did that for 22 years. And honestly, I did what I had to do, man. But I know that's not the necessarily healthiest thing, but that is where it came from. The belief that anybody that I dated would be below me because they would be attracted to me. And so it was this kind of catch-22. And the only
Yeah, it's a very weird thing. I think that does happen a lot in the gay world too, or at least it used to. Probably not anymore. But I know that there's a lot of gay men that think that way. It's kind of interesting, the parallels of that. That was weird to me. But I definitely, what I think a lot of gay men, FETISHIs, straight men for that reason, because they view another gay man as beneath them or something. I thought that was dumb, like past the age of high school, honestly. But a lot of gay men, they stay that way, you know. But that's a different issue, and we're not going to get into that. But it's just interesting that there's that kind of parallel there. So, I don't know. Like I said, at this point in my life, I don't internalize any of those messages. I'm not trying to constantly view somebody as like above or beneath me or whatever. I'm just more so like, I want somebody that I'm matched with, which I think is a natural tendency to want. And when something as mutable as weight is involved, it's really tricky. It's such a tricky thing. And I don't know. It's definitely like dating politics and stuff, which it does exist regardless of weight. I mean, there's things like this on all these other levels, but I think weight is just such a changeable thing. It really makes it tricky because it's totally changeable, totally shiftable, you know? Like something like how I talk, that's not going to change. So wherever I'm going to be on the dating market as a gay man with my voice and how I talk, that will stay the same. But my weight is not going to stay the same. My attitude doesn't have to stay the same, right? Like different aspects of you don't have to stay the same. And so it's tricky. It's tricky. And it's something that I'm going to have to consider a lot, I think, moving forward. Because I don't want to stay single forever. I really don't. But I just don't know when to cash in, so to speak, and where, you know. And I think that is tough because, again, there is status involved in dating, but there's also like they've muddied the waters around fatness to where there's this other layer to it that I wish wasn't there because it's already hard enough. So a lot of these conversations, it just makes it harder. And I'm not really offering like a solution. I'm just more so bringing up the issue because I feel it very deeply right now, extremely deeply. So let's continue.
The only option for me was to completely say no to dating and step out of it.
Yeah, she didn't offer a solution either. I'm going to see if I can find some more TikToks. We'll be back. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a long one. This one's like 5 minutes. It's about catfishing. So we're going to do this. I think this will be interesting. This comes up a lot in fat dating. And I just want to give my perspective. Again, I'm not necessarily taking an adversarial position to Abby right away. You know, dating topics and these kinds of things, it's a lot more subjective than if she's talking about like, it's healthy to be fat. Then it's not subjective and then we get more snippy. But let's go ahead and listen to her talk about catfishing, and I will offer my perspective. So this person says, let's talk about the way quote unquote catfishing as a concept is misused to perpetuate an entitled and fatphobic sexual culture. Like, unless the accused catfisher is literally stealing someone else's identity. Okay. All right. That's a weird comment. I wouldn't even know what to say to that, but I guess it spoke to Abby's soul. So let's go.
Let's talk about catfishing. You've just given me the idea to do a full podcast episode on it and really go into the history and all of that, but right now I just want to talk about like how it is portrayed on the internet and how it interacts with weight stigma and body size. When I first heard of the term catfishing in the early 2000s when I was a kid and people were getting really like up in arms about internet safety for the first time, I remember it being introduced to me as this concept of like an adult pretending to be a child or a woman pretending to be a man or like something.
I agree. Something more serious, right?
Really drastically different, like creating a whole fake identity. And often that would be like to scam someone or to stalk them, or it was like a really nefarious thing. Now, what people call catfishing is often something as simple as using photos on your dating profile from when you were a little smaller or even at good angles. And a lot of times, fat women in particular are very afraid of being accused of being a catfish on a dating profile because this is something that happens to us often. Even if we disclaim that we're fat in our profile, even if we feel that our pictures reflect our size, if somebody meets us in person and they think, oh, that person's fatter than I expected them to be, they will often accuse you of being a catfish outright. And as I said in my previous video, this has caused a lot of bigger women to either disclaim that they're fat on their dating apps or to be really worried about making sure they're presenting their body.
I'm totally in agreement with her so far.
Size as it is and not as smaller than they really are.
But I think it's hard because weight is such again, it's so mutable. And the mutability of it really, really complicates dating because let's say you did take pictures and then you go on the date and you're super swollen that day. It could be perceived as you lied, right? Let's say you've lost some weight. And so somebody is also going to turn you down because they assume that you're still as big as you were. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very weird. The lines of it are so fuzzy, and I honestly cannot wait to just be done with this type of thing because it is a nightmare, honestly. And it's hard enough to date without this issue, which is why I'm always like, don't accept being fat. Like, you don't need to make this more complicated for yourself. So insert anti-FA talking point. But when we are fat, and trying to date and when you're losing weight and all these things, it is tricky. It is because it's very murky. It's like very, very foggy and murky. And it isn't black and white. It's very shades of gray. And that's difficult for a lot of, especially if you're trying to date men, that's difficult for a lot of men to handle. It is, especially in terms of a commitment. I will always assert, I think any woman or gay guy or whatever, pretty much, not every single one ever, but most, the vast majority of which could definitely get a hookup or, attention or these kinds of things. But to get a commitment, it's a different level and it's a lot harder. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's a lot harder when the issue of weight is put in there on both sides. It's hard on your side and it's hard on the other person's side. So it's just, it's really, really tough. It's really tough. I can't wait for it to be over, honestly. Like, I would love to just be in a stable relationship going towards marriage or getting married or whatever. Like, I'm over this. I'm really over it. But that's what happens, when you're single and losing weight. It's tough. I have to struggle with this.
Let's actually be really clear about something. There is a huge, huge difference between using photos of yourself from like flattering angles that make you look thinner or from when you were a little smaller than you are now and pretending to be a whole other category of person and duping someone else into, thinking you are a fake person or someone you are not saying that you are. Like, there's a level of deception that is so different. And I think using the word catfish assumes this like sort of maliciousness on fat women's part and plays into a lot of the predatory stereotypes that we see very commonly in media surrounding bigger women. Now, a lot of people brought up Baby Reindeer, but I think the even better example is Sierra Burgess is a Loser. If anyone hasn't seen that, it's supposedly a retelling of Cyrano de Bergerac. And so you have this character, Sierra, who's this like fatter high school girl, basically like behind the scenes tricking a boy into falling in
I
love.
haven't watched that. I wonder if I should. But I almost watched it, if that makes sense. Like, I know exactly what she's talking about. That's funny.
Like her personality instead of her looks. And you know, this might be problematic for a lot of reasons to people like, oh, you know, obviously right there is the insinuation that like if you're fat, you're automatically unattractive and unlovable, blah blah blah. Like, yeah, we know that's in everything. But what's really fucked up is what she ends up doing to claim his affection. Like there is even one scene where he's gone on a date with the girl he really likes, who Sierra's like been pretending to be essentially, and on their real live date he gets tricked into kissing Sierra when really he thinks he's kissing the other girl. And this is what we put forward as our like fat girl hero, which is literal sexual assault. That's not consensual. And so from the catfish narrative, we're not just getting that fat women's bodies are so undesirable that they can never be loved as they are. We're getting that they are slimy and manipulative liars who have to trick people into, you know, being with them in some way. The trope of catfish, once it emerged, was very quickly assigned to fat women who were assumed to be ashamed of their bodies, who were assumed to be unable to get affection. And often, especially with white fat women, their personalities and their body are juxtaposed when we want to feel sympathy for them. So you see this like idea of like, oh, this girl is like so smart and so cool and so nice, it's just too bad she's fat and her outside doesn't match her inside, and how will she ever find someone who loves her for her inside when her outside looks like that? And very quickly, along with the idea of like the gluttony and the
it's a lot of like 90s logic there. It's very 90s-ish, which I do think a lot of millennials cannot let go of the 90s, or they can't let go of those mindsets, because I know we hate to be like super blunt and realistic, and sometimes I hate being friends with Eric because he's he's a super concrete thinker and very blunt at times. But it's like he will literally say like, you're looking better now. And of course, like my little moment is like, oh, so you're saying I didn't look good before? And he's like, well, if you're saying that, if you're asking me, he's going to be like, no, you didn't. And it's like, oh, but that's like not 90s logic of like, the only thing that matters is what's inside and all that stuff. I think I come to it from a realistic perspective, and I think both matter. Inside matters and outside matters. I think they both matter. I think it's stupid to only date based on appearance and only date based on the inside. I think both issues are they're stupid. They're very stupid. And I feel like we had a lot of dating only for the outside really like in the 2010s. And I feel like in the 2020s, what I want to do, what I think a lot of us need to do, is look at both of them. Look at the interaction between both and be willing to take concessions on both if the combination of the two are enough. And I think that that's tough. That's tough for a lot of people, because we definitely had this like 90s, 2000s, like only the inside matters. And then this 2010s, only the outside matters. And both have had massive impacts on dating, and it hasn't been good. I think most people that I have talked to, in my own experience, most, especially women that, you know, I talk to a lot of women about dating, obviously, but a lot of guys too. You know, I don't have like tons and tons and tons of male friends, but I do have some, and they also are not doing well. I think most people who are single, it's not going well. It's tough. And I think it's really hard because, not to be like too negative, I guess, but when I look at like straight people like struggling so horribly, and I mean like I see it a lot, it gives me almost no hope as a gay man, because it's even harder. So in gay men, they take these narratives on like a freaking, I don't know, like they worship the television. I swear, you guys, I don't get it. I'm not that kind of gay. Like I don't even really watch TV, but a lot of gay men, they really like they take that programming to heart. So it's like it's tough. But I think that both sides of this, it has totally trashed dating culture on so many different levels. And I think if we're ever going to move forward, we have to just consider both. You have to consider how you look on the outside and how you look on the inside and who you are on the inside, because we're never going to be perfect either way. And that's what I'm trying to understand, because, I still want to get married. I want to have a life partner and these kinds of things. I really do. But it is a dark point. In my dating life, it's still a very dark point. It's a difficult time. And I think it is difficult culturally too. And I'm rooting for all of us. I'll put it to you that way. But when you add dating into it, or like when you add fatness into it, it's just really, it's like it's already a tough time. And I have this issue of fat on top of it. And it's like, ooh. So I will always say, don't be fat. Don't accept it. It makes it even harder. It makes it even harder, and it's not necessary. Okay? Okay.
Greed and the desperation that is always a part of fat people's characterizations in media, you get to a true and serious catfish. And where that is so dangerous is when we apply it to real life, which we all do. Like, we all learn things from media and we all apply it to our real lives. We are just not that good at separating things out. So when you...
I'm pretty decent at it, but I'm not, like, it doesn't matter if other people see it. You know what I mean? Or if other people are, like, really soaking it up. There's enough people that do soak it up that it still affects us culturally, even for people like me who are brat, we'll just say, or who are not a people pleaser. Like, I don't go based on what other people say at all, typically. And I still have to deal with it because a lot of people do. A lot of people do worship the television. I think it's stupid, but a lot of people do, don't they?
You have the language of catfish and you're used to seeing portrayals like Sierra Burgess or Baby Reindeer or whatever it is, and that's how you see fat women, it's easy to make, putting a photo...
Baby Reindeer was not a catfish situation. That was just like a very abusive dynamic. That's all.
That doesn't match how you really look quite at this moment, into this category of very sinister, borderline essay adjacent, like deviant behavior. And so I think maybe this is a conversation we need to have. Yes, it is something that, like, I as a fat woman, I'm aware of this. I would never get on a dating app and put photos that don't look like me and don't show that I'm fat, because I'm aware of that. But in the end of the day, is it such a crime? It's not catfishing. Literally, as this commenter says, you're not stealing someone's identity, you're just presenting yourself, as not quite really how you look now. And I don't think that is an insurmountable or unforgivable offense.
I think it really depends. It depends on how far you're going. There are a lot of times where people, even if you just have too much makeup on, they see that as a catfish. So I don't know. I would just try to be as realistic as you can. I know it's hard because there's like rejection and there's all this stuff and it sucks. It really, really sucks. But just be realistic and show how you actually look. That's the best way to put your best foot forward. And honestly, I would suggest, especially if you're straight, maybe try a different way of dating or something. I don't know. I don't know if the online thing is... I understand that a lot of people are meeting people online, but I don't know if it works for everybody. And I think that has to be acknowledged too. Like, I have never had a significant, person in my life come from a dating app. It has never happened. I have met them online, but in other ways, not on an app. So I don't know. I just don't know if it works for everybody, but you guys can give me your thoughts, I guess. It's an interesting conversation, anyways. Let's see what else she has to say. She's almost done.
Because I know lots of people who put like, yassified photos of themselves on dating apps and ended up going on that date and got along really well and dated them anyway. So I'm really glad you brought this up because I think we need to have this conversation about how catfishing is actually a very serious thing and is tied into that hypersexual fat person trope, which I wrote my dissertation about, and is very sinister and perhaps unfair to apply to somebody who just put photos of themselves where they were a little thinner than they are now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the term fat fishing is better because I don't think it's as severe at all. I agree with her there, and I do think it is more of a gray area than black or white, like you're totally being somebody else, for example. That is a catfish. However, there are shades of gray in catfishing. You know, I've had a guy lie about who he was or lie about his life or, these kinds of things. And I would still consider that a catfish, even if I knew how he looked, you know? I still think it's a catfish. It's a shade of gray. It's not, and I think a lot of us have been through that. Like there are people who they go on dates with somebody to find out that they're actually secretly cheating, you know? To me, that's a form of catfishing too. Even if you're not being a totally different person, you can still be extremely deceptive. And again, that can happen even without online dating. That's happened probably forever, you know? So I think she doesn't want to acknowledge that there's shades of gray in catfishing. I like the term fat fishing because it's better. It shows it's not as severe as other forms of this, but just because you're not claiming to be somebody else doesn't mean you're not catfishing, in my opinion. I think you can still catfish while claiming to be you. So let me know what you guys think. This is just kind of an interesting discussion. Um, I am very interested in your thoughts. I will talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Peace.